So some people in Nashville were sitting around talking one day, and it wound up in the press. And they said, "What is this Americana music?" And one of the people said, "It's that music at Merlefest."
That's a compliment.
And I take a lot of pride in the fact now that we have the B-Towns Americana stage.
Yeah,
Where it pays homage to Doc and Merle's music with a buzzword that means something to the public beyond what traditional plus meant.
Sure. And it has become, Americana has become a big genre and format of music these days.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's huge. But, that's. Do you have a favorite moment in all the years?
Ralph Rensler was with the Smithsonian, and he's the musicologist that found Doc Watson playing music with Gaither Carlton, his father-in-law, and the family, and took him up north to the folk festivals and really exposed Doc's music to the world. Doc had always told me in 1987, winter of 1988, not to worry because Ralph Rensler would take care of, just like Cliff was going to take care of the sound,
right.
Ralph Rensler would take care of the festival. And so I was writing letters to the Smithsonian and not hearing anything. And I was go to the switchboard here at the college and call up there, and nobody knew anything about where Ralph Rensler was. And I got a call from France. Ralph Rensler was in France the week before the festival. And he said, "Doc wants me to come say something about Merle. What do I need to do?" And I said, "Well, Mr. Rensler, he tells me you're going to take care of everything." And he said, "Well, who all you got coming?" I said, "Well, Earl Scruggs said he would come if he had to crawl. And Chet Atkins, and Mac Wiseman, and Sam Bush, and Bela Fleck, and Tony Rice, and John Hartford, and Grandpa Jones, and the list goes on and on." He said, "Oh, my." He said, "Well, do you have a schedule?" I said, "I don't have a schedule. I don't know what you're talking about." And he said, "Well, can somebody pick me up? I'm flying into Greensboro on Thursday of next week." I said, "Well, I'll pick you up." So I picked him up and driving back here to Wilkesboro, and I think he stayed at our house maybe. I explained to him what was going on. He came into the college on Friday morning, sat down with Brenda Shepard, who was a secretary in the department there, and he wrote out the script for the 2 days festival, who would play with who, when. There weren't any bands then. It was just individuals, and we were going to put them together.
Sure.
And then he duplicated it an hour or two later. He said, "Now everybody play at the Walker Center, and then they got to play down at the outdoor stage," because by then, you see, we had two audiences. I digress because when Cliff said move it all outside, the president here said, "No, you're not doing that. You can have the two places, but these people are going to sit in air conditioning. They bought their tickets, and so everybody had to play up there, and then Ralph gave me the typed out sheet and said, 'Now you're the festival director.' So I had to meet Grandpa Jones when he pulled his camper in. I had to meet Earl Scruggs at the motel and say, 'Well, you need to be over there at such and such time tomorrow, and we'll pick you up.' So we had a bunch of volunteers with their cars hauling them around.
Did you tell them at that point that they would play 2 times too?
the most interesting memory of that, Sandy, is Sam and Bela and Jerry Douglas had all, said they'd be here.
Yeah.
Well, Sam had a band, Newgrass Revival, and he called me a day or two before, and he said, "Now we're on the road. We're going to be playing Green Acres on Saturday night. Can I bring my band?" And I said, "Well, I guess. I don't know. I've got you and Bela. Who are these other people?"
Yeah.
Pat Flynn and John Cowan. And I said, "Well, I didn't even ask Doc."
Right.
Looking back on it, I was teaching classes and all this was happening. So when they pulled in on Sunday, they had an old van and a trailer behind it holding all their gear. And Richard Battaglia, their road manager, gets out. This is like an hour or two before they're supposed to perform at the Walker Center. And he said, I need to set up. And I said, "Well, I need to take you to the Walker Center." So he got in my little Jeep and we drove up to the Walker Center. He said, "Well, I ain't got time to set up two places. I'll set up one place or the other." Well, David Holt and George Hamilton IV were our MCs that year.
Yeah.
They both happened to be standing there, and they overheard it. And so I said, "Guys, what do I do? What do we do?" George Hamilton said, "Ain't nothing to do but for you to go out there to this microphone and tell all these people that if they want to see Newgrass Revival and Tony Rice, they're going to have to go outside." I'd never been in front of a microphone and 1,000 people in my life. And I had to go out and tell them that if they wanted to see the last act, they'd have to follow me down the steps. Now, we didn't even have a parking lot then. It was just gravel up there. And they walked, 1,000 people walked down the steps, followed me down here, and joined these other thousands of people sitting on hay bales in the grass field. And the reason the image of the first Merlefest is of that field is because we didn't have much video or camera in the dark Walker Center. We had some outdoors. And Mule Ferguson was running the video, and radio station had the sound recording, and that's a different story, but we wound up making a video of that first one because of that.
Right. That's just that. I guess sometimes solutions create themselves.
Yeah. But you got to think about the spirit of that first fundraiser. Everybody bought a ticket, including myself. Everybody was donating their time that was helping. And so it just had a really good feel to it. And it's a spirit of cooperation.
That has been really big through this whole festival, has it not?
It has, because as that first festival director, per Ralph Renzer, showed me how to do it, and that was my paradigm. That was my frame of reference.
Right.
I'd never been to a bluegrass festival. I'd never been to any kind of festival. I had to ask, what was a festival?
That's funny.
You're talking to a horticulture teacher.
That's funny. But you see the community now involved, how a lot of the vendors are
It's all nonprofits involved, and we have over 4,000 volunteers putting it together. And this is not only the college's event, it's our community's event.
I believe that. The Boy Scouts benefiting from running the buses.
Yep.
So, yeah, I've always felt that this was a community-supported event, which is, that's big when a community can get behind something.
I agree.
I mean, it's you don't see that much. I mean, I've been to hundreds of festivals in my career, but these seem totally as community supported as any I've ever been to. Mm-hmm. I don't know how you foster that. Did it just happen?
No, it didn't. That's, I had the opportunity to travel with Doc to to some other festivals to return favors. So like Dollywood or Pete Seeger's festival, the Hudson River Revival. And I got to see how a few festivals were run. And that gave me ideas. And I saw right quick that for us to be successful, we had to have the community support. And the college could not come up with all the people to do the different aspects of it. So we went out into the community, and to get them involved, we said, okay, you'll get some of the proceeds.
Right. Oh, it worked. I mean, you're sitting here telling me basically you didn't know what you were doing, and you did it great.
But it had a lot of good support and got a lot of good ideas. And I like to think about, I was Doc's eyes to what a festival could be, and he was my ears, because I'm not musically inclined.
Great analogy. That's a really great analogy. Well, it's been wonderful. I spoke with Roy Bookbinder yesterday, and he was telling me about, he's been here since he missed the first two, and he's been ever since, which you've had a lot of acts like that keep coming back. Yes,
Sam's the spirit of Merlefest.
Sure he is.
And he pops up everywhere, and everybody wants to play with him, or he invites others to play with him. So he's our spirit of Merlefest. And people like Bookbinder, because of his blues orientation,
Right.
I asked him to coordinate our blues acts. Alice Gerard, I got involved and helped with the traditional acts because I didn't know these people. Early on, I was reading the history of bluegrass music by Neil Rosenberg. So if you look at that second festival, if you look at the lineup, it was Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys. It was Jim and Jesse and Virginians. And when we got done with that second festival, I asked Doc, well, how did we do? He said, good, but you had too many bands. See, the first festival was only one band, Newgrass Revival, and then all of a sudden we've got that. I said, oh, okay, I see what you're saying. And then I started learning about folk music. And so I just called up Pete Seeger, talked to him and his wife, and Toshi said, well, yeah, Pete will come down there and do that, but he wants Doc to come up here. So to return the favor, I drove Doc to New York and had dinner with Peter, Paul, and Mary and Pete Seeger, and
That's not the worst dinner.
and sat around and talked about how a festival, and guess what? It was on a community college campus, and they had 3 stages. They had a folk stage, they had a traditional stage, and a bluegrass stage. So I've come back thinking, okay, we're going to have some different stages. And if you look at that third or fourth festival, we had a lot of folkies. Pete Seeger, Robin Linda Williams. And so each year it just kind of developed. And I was branching out and learning, and Doc was very open with me about what he thought would work or wouldn't work.
Well, and obviously he had a pretty good finger on the pulse of how music worked, what people would come see.
Oh yeah, well, the music of Doc Watson is something that was timeless.
Yeah, still is timeless, yeah.
But I was able to put Doc with Kukuruza, a Russian bluegrass band. I was able to put Doc with Michelle Schacht,
Yeah.
Strawberry Jam that they recorded together,
Right.
a rocker. Able to put Doc with Sam Bush and Jerry and Bela and recreate the bluegrass album, Riding the Midnight Train. Was able to put Doc with Dolly, put Doc with Ronnie Millsap, and the list goes on and on. Doc with Levon Helm,
Yeah. I mean, that's
Doc with the Nashville Bluegrass Band, recreating his gospel album. Just think about how powerful that was to somebody like me
Yeah.
to write the script for that and then to see it unfold. And then if you go back and look at our archives, I was able to write the program for the dock jams and who was going to play with who and when. And I learned that from Ralph Rensler.
Oh, yeah, from the very first one.
Because Ralph had written it out. Stewart would play fiddle.
Yeah.
Baylor would play banjo.
That has been become kind of a standard with festivals since that's happened.
Yep. So what else do you need?
What else do I need? All right, a couple of other things. How about the Appalachian Trail?
20 years ago, my son William and I through hiked the Appalachian Trail, 2005. We picked that year because he was a sophomore in college at W&L and had a mini break. He had 5 months off. And so I took a sabbatical from the college, and he and I hiked from Georgia to Maine.
And you got it done in the 5 months.
We got it done in the 5 months. And we did a non-traditional through hike. It's called a flip-flop.
Yeah, you went northbound.
We went northbound from Georgia to Virginia, and then we leapfrogged to Maine because my daughter was in high school and she and my wife could join us, so they did Katahdin with us, and then hiked south 100 miles. And then we continued, and we wanted to be in Central Virginia where he was in college at the end.
Right.
And so our last day, we crossed the James River Bridge, and his entire outing club from Washington and Lee met us. And he went back to school the next day.
That's great. I was curious about that because that's been big with my family also.
Yeah.
So I was just it's a wonderful journey in itself.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's life changing.
Before Merlefest, though, you already had a wonderful career.
Well, working at Wilkes Community College from 1973, when the community college system was in its infancy, new programs were blossoming almost every day. We had the veterans coming back on the GI Bills. We had a lot of enrollment in agriculture programs. And I got to see not only Wilkes Community College, but the North Carolina Community College system in its heyday, blossoming, maturing, growing. I started here with these 3 concrete buildings. And the trees you see out front, I had a hand in planting.
I figure everything that's been planted here, you had a hand in.
Well, I either had a hand or had directed someone or was involved with the process. Can't personally take credit for physically doing everything.
Right. But I'm supposed you pretty much decided what was going in every garden and everything, right?
Yeah, well, we've had a lot of other people have input too. So, and then gardens change over time. You know, the plants die or get replaced, but the permanent skeletal structure that's here will be here from now on.
That's great. What am I missing from this story?
Ask me about the name Merlefest.
Yeah, okay. So tell me about the name Merlefest. How did that come about?
Looking back on it, we had the second annual Eddie Merle Watson Memorial Festival. And we had the third annual Eddie Merle Watson Memorial Festival. That's a mouthful.
That is a mouthful.
And back then, I got a lot of letters. some critical, some complimentary, you know. But the correspondence was letters. And I got a letter one day from Kay Crouch at Caldwell Community College. And she and her husband make music to this day. But they had broke down driving from Wilkesboro to Lenoir in a little community called Boomer, where I live, by the country store. And so while they were waiting on a wrecker, she wrote a song called Boomer Breakdown. And she sent the letter with a tape of that Boomer Breakdown. Said, Mr. B, when is the next Merlefest?
That's funny.
And I thought, man, I like that. And so I went to see Bill Young. I said, what do you think? He said, well, you better ask Doc.
Right, yeah.
So I went to Doc, and Doc said, well, you better ask the little lady. So I sat down again with Rosalie, and I said, what would you think about if we changed it to Merlefest? And she said, honey, that's a wonderful idea. I was sweating bullets, because just think about it. We would be having the 37th annual Eddie Merle Memorial Festival.
And I remember when it was that way, and that was a mouthful.
Instead of Merlefest. And, you know, which can take a lot of pride, because almost everything now is a fest of some kind.
It is.
And they're taking that from us. But I took ideas from everybody else. And that's what it's all about, is sharing ideas. And I think that part of it, to me, is just a special memory.
This is funny. I'll tell you this. So I'm somewhat involved with the Earl Scruggs Festival. And one of the things they wanted specifically to do is not call it an Earl Fest.
Yeah. Because there's Dale Fest.
Yeah, and they just wanted, they said,
it's the Earl Scruggs Review.
Yeah, and they didn't want to take away, because a lot of people who are doing that festival have been involved with you too over the years, and it just, if anyone says something about Earl Fest, they just melt down. Yeah. And it's in honor of Merlefest instead of an Earl Fest. They don't want to cross that. Yeah. Which I have respect for. So.
Yeah. Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Okay. Look forward to it.